Hey, folks. Ukraine. There is a new problem now facing Ukraine, which has to do with power generation. After the weekend that we're coming from, Russia has been hitting Ukraine hard and hitting their energy infrastructure in particular. And subsequently, Ukraine has, by its own admission, lost generating capacity, power generating capacity, to the extent that they have zero generation capacity currently. I don't know if people understand like what that means. To have zero generating capacity. It is beyond anything fathomable or imaginable. Like I'm thinking now with regards to South Africa, who in the past 10 years or so has had problems with what do you call it, power generation. And the South African problems of power generation have been because of failure to maintain power stations. And at the worst time, when South Africa had its worst load shedding, or what my American friends would call rolling outages, there was up to 6 hours of load shedding per day in terms of per area. So maybe there'll be 4 or 5 hours of load shedding during the day, and then there'll be 4 or 5 hours of load shedding during the night. It was brutal. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. Like, but that was because South Africa had lost around about 20%, maybe 25% of its generating capacity due to failure to maintain the production fleet. But it was also due because at the time the power utility company was putting many units offline with the intention of actually having extended and long unplanned maintenance program in order for the prevention of power cuts in the future, which, as I understand, that has been solved, that has been fixed. And Ukraine is a much smaller country than South Africa. Ukraine is 37 million people. So, I mean, even if you add, say, 5 more million people from the people who might have left because of the war, I can even add 6 million people to that number, making it what? 43, let's just say 45 million people. Ukraine still has fewer people than South Africa, which has 65 million people. I'm just trying to contextualize this for people to understand. If what were to happen if South Africa, for instance, were to lose all of its power generating capacity, can you imagine such a thing? All of the plants would shut down. The refineries wouldn't be able to work. The smelters wouldn't be able to work. The plants, the manufacturing plants, the production lines around Northwest, Limpopo, Northwest. Or let's just even use Texas in terms of what were to happen to Texas if Texas lost 100% of its production capacity. That would mean all of those plants in Houston overnight shut down. Houston, pitch black. Austin, nothing. Dallas, San Antonio, Fort Worth, El Paso. It would be something that is so devastating that if it's happening during school season, Schools will have to close. I don't know what hospitals will have to do, because you can try to put some of the hospital equipment on generators and maybe on solar power, but that's not sufficient. Especially in a war-torn country like Ukraine, which has lost a lot of its alternative energy sources outside of electricity, like many of their gas pipelines and oil pipelines have been destroyed, which makes it really difficult for them to actually supply alternative energy, which is alternative to electricity. Credible reports coming out of Ukraine tell us that more than 60% of Ukraine's gas infrastructure, storage, and processing has been damaged. More than 60%. And the thing about this is that Ukraine will enter its winter in less than 3 weeks, maybe 2.5 weeks. And Ukraine is, without an exaggeration, one of the coldest places in the world. Can you imagine a winter, a winter in East Europe without power, without even gas? Can you fathom this thing? Like, okay, I suppose Ukraine is not necessarily considered as one of the coldest places in the world, but it is, especially some parts of it are one of the coldest places in the world. And its proximity to Russia obviously tells us there's a big part of it, especially of eastern Ukraine, are one of the coldest places in the world. They do have temperatures sometimes in winter that go like minus 30 degrees, minus 20 degrees. Temperatures for me which are just simply unthinkable. It's actually unthinkable. Like being in a place that is at minus 30 degrees Celsius, it is just unthinkable. It is just like, it is unthinkable. I can't even fathom such a thing. And that's really what's happening in Ukraine right now. And my thinking is that maybe it's time for Ukraine to actually sue for peace. Maybe it's time for them to throw in the towel. Maybe it's time for them to raise the white flag of surrender. Really, really, like, I don't see a path forward for them. It's been reported also that Ukraine has lost more than 1 million people, and that the Ukrainian losses are 36 times what Russia has lost. Which is to say, therefore, if Ukraine has lost, let's just say, a flat 1 million people, um, how much then has Russia lost if Ukraine has lost 36 times more than what Russia has lost? That would mean Russia has lost roughly 30,000 men, which is actually quite a lot. But if you're comparing it to what Ukraine has lost, it seems like it's nothing. So, if I'm looking at in terms of all the other information that we already have about this war so far, even before Ukraine said they've lost all production capacity for power, it is clear to me that Ukraine needs to surrender. There's no path. Because right now, at least in the next 2 weeks, they need to, while they are fighting a war, try to rebuild at least up to 50% of their power generation capacity. That is just not possible, folks. That is just not possible. The amount of time it takes to build a plant, normally it takes 5 to 10 years. A power plant, power station. Like, so if a power station was damaged, even if, let's say, 50% of it was damaged beyond repair, it will take years to put that plant back into operation, put it back online. So I don't see how Ukraine will be able to be back operational, producing power before, I'll even say even before next winter, which is 2026. When it comes to power infrastructure, it is incredibly difficult once you lose that kind of infrastructure to actually put it back online. And I don't even think they have the money to, because, folks, they just need to surrender. There's no path forward here. They need to surrender. The only thing to do here is to surrender. That's the only thing that they can do. But what can we say? You have people in the West lying to them, telling them that no, victory is possible. You have lunatics on Fox News lying about what's possible in this war. So they're probably not going to surrender, but that will probably be the best thing for them to do for themselves and for their people. Cheers.